I wiped down the coffee-stained counter at Murphy's Diner, the familiar weight of the dish rag grounding me after what just happened in courtroom 3. My phone buzzes with another text from my sister Victoria, still playing waitress at that greasy spoon. "When are you going to get a real job, Becca?" She has absolutely no idea that 3 hours ago, I sentenced her business partner to community service, and tomorrow morning her lawyer will be standing before my bench calling me Your Honor. But let me back up and tell you how 8 years of family lies finally caught up with the truth. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The emergency court session notice arrives on my desk at 7 in the morning, stamped urgent in red ink across the top. Thompson-Hayes Real Estate versus the City of Cedar Rapids, emergency injunction hearing, courtroom 3 at 10 a.m. I scan the plaintiff's name twice before it fully registers. Victoria Thompson-Hayes, my sister, the same sister who texted me last night about my dead-end diner job while I was reviewing case briefs in my downtown apartment. I set my coffee cup down carefully on the mahogany desk in my chambers, watching the steam curl upward as my mind races through the implications. 5 years of sitting on the municipal court bench, and somehow Victoria has never connected Judge Rebecca Thompson with her disappointment of a sister who serves hash browns at Murphy's Diner twice a week. The irony would be hilarious if it weren't about to explode our family's carefully maintained fiction about my life. Grace Murphy's voice echoes in my memory from yesterday afternoon as I refilled sugar dispensers between the lunch and dinner rushes. "Rebecca, honey, you sure you don't want to drop those diner shifts? You've got plenty on your plate without worrying about whether table 6 wants their eggs over easy." Grace has been asking me the same question for 2 years, ever since she found out about my real job. She's the only person who knows the truth about both sides of my life, and she's never understood why I keep serving coffee when I could be home writing legal opinions. The truth is complicated, rooted in decisions I made 8 years ago when Victoria graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern Law and our parents threw a celebration dinner that lasted until midnight. I was finishing my second year at University of Iowa Law, pulling decent grades but nothing spectacular, and the constant comparisons to my brilliant older sister had worn me down to the bone. When Victoria landed her first position at a prestigious Chicago firm, making more money than Dad had ever dreamed of, the family narrative solidified around her success and my mediocrity. That summer, I started working at Murphy's Diner to pay for my third-year expenses. Grace hired me on the spot when I walked in wearing a wrinkled interview outfit, desperate for any job that would help me avoid more student loans. The work was honest and straightforward, nothing like the competitive backstabbing I witnessed daily at law school. Customers treated me with genuine kindness, and Grace became the grandmother I'd never had, teaching me about resilience and dignity in work that society dismisses as unimportant. When I graduated law school the following year, Victoria was already making partner track at her firm, and my parents had shifted their attention entirely to her accomplishments. My graduation dinner lasted 40 minutes, sandwiched between Dad's golf game and Mom's book club meeting. Victoria couldn't attend because she was closing a major commercial real estate deal, but she sent a card with a generic congratulations message and a $20 gift certificate to a restaurant chain. The municipal court clerkship opened up 6 months later, and I applied without telling my family. Judge Patricia Williams hired me based on my community service record and my thesis on restorative justice in local courts. Patricia became my mentor, teaching me that real justice happens in the daily interactions between courts and communities, not in the high-profile cases that make headlines. When she announced her retirement 3 years ago and recommended me as her successor, I felt like I had found my calling. My phone rings, interrupting my memories. Lisa Martinez, my court clerk, pokes her head through the doorway. "Judge Thompson, the attorneys are here for the emergency hearing." Thompson-Hayes Real Estate brought quite an entourage. Lisa has worked in this courthouse for 15 years, and nothing surprises her anymore, but I catch the curiosity in her voice about the shared surname.
How many attorneys?
I ask, straightening my robes and checking my appearance in the mirror behind my desk. The black judicial robes transform me completely from the woman in Murphy's uniform who served coffee to courthouse staff just yesterday morning. None of them recognized me then, focused on their morning caffeine fix, and none of them will connect the dots now. 3 from Hayes and Associates, plus 2 from the city attorney's office, Lisa reports. And there's a woman in the gallery who keeps checking her phone and looking nervous. Blonde, expensive suit, looks like she owns the place. Victoria, my sister, is actually here, probably coordinating strategy from the gallery, while her husband David handles the legal arguments. I gather my files and walk toward courtroom 3, my footsteps echoing in the marble hallway of the historic courthouse. The building was renovated 5 years ago, and the blend of original architecture with modern technology creates an atmosphere of dignified authority. My chambers overlook the town square where Murphy's Diner sits on the corner, red neon sign visible from my window. Sometimes I watch Grace unlocking the front door in the mornings, starting another day of feeding the community with the same dedication I bring to dispensing justice. The courtroom fills as I enter, and I spot Victoria immediately in the front row of the gallery. She's typing furiously on her phone, probably updating clients or coordinating with her team. Her blonde hair is pulled back in a perfect chignon, and her navy suit probably costs more than most people make in a month. David Hayes stands at the plaintiff's table, conferring with 2 associate attorneys while organizing thick folders of documents. I take my seat at the bench, the elevated position providing a clear view of everyone present. Victoria glances up from her phone briefly, her eyes skimming over me without recognition. Why would she look twice at a municipal court judge? In Victoria's world, real legal work happens in federal courts and corporate boardrooms, not in small-town courtrooms dealing with business license disputes and property violations. Good morning, I begin, my voice carrying the authority I've developed over 5 years of managing courtroom proceedings. This is an emergency hearing in the matter of Thompson-Hayes Real Estate versus the City of Cedar Rapids, case number 24-773. Counsel, please state your appearances for the record. David Hayes approaches the podium, his confidence evident in every gesture. David Hayes of Hayes and Associates, representing Thompson-Hayes Real Estate, Your Honor. With me today are Associates Jennifer Walsh and Marcus Kim. He gestures toward his team with practiced precision, clearly accustomed to commanding courtroom attention. The city attorney, Robert Crawford, rises from the defendant's table. Robert Crawford, city attorney, representing the City of Cedar Rapids in this matter, Your Honor. With me is Assistant City Attorney Maria Gonzalez. Robert has appeared before me dozens of times over the years, and
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
We have a professional rapport built on mutual respect and efficient case management. Mr. Hayes, this is your emergency motion. Please proceed with your argument. I settle back in my chair, maintaining the neutral expression that has become second nature during complex proceedings. Victoria continues typing on her phone, occasionally whispering to the man beside her, probably another business associate. David begins his presentation, outlining what appears to be a significant dispute over commercial property licensing and zoning violations. According to his argument, the city has unfairly targeted Thompson-Hayes Real Estate with selective enforcement of building codes, threatening to shut down their operations and destroy their reputation in the community. He speaks with the polished rhetoric of someone accustomed to high-stakes litigation, building his case methodically while requesting immediate injunctive relief. As David continues, I review the case file Lisa prepared for me earlier this morning. The city's position appears stronger than David is acknowledging, with documented evidence of multiple violations at Thompson-Hayes properties going back 18 months. Photos show substandard housing conditions, improperly maintained commercial buildings, and what appears to be systematic negligence in property management. This isn't selective enforcement, it's a pattern of violations finally catching up with a company that assumed it could operate without proper oversight. Victoria's phone buzzes loudly enough to disturb the proceedings, and she checks the screen with visible annoyance. I watch her text response, fingers flying over the keyboard with obvious frustration. Whatever crisis she's managing from the gallery, it's competing with her husband's legal arguments for her attention. The family business is clearly under more pressure than David's confident presentation suggests. Mr. Hayes, I interrupt after 20 minutes of presentation. I need clarification on the timeline of these alleged violations. According to the city's documentation, the first notice of violation was issued in March of last year. What actions did Thompson-Hayes Real Estate take in response to that initial notice? My question cuts through David's rhetoric to address the core issue: why the company allowed violations to accumulate for over a year before seeking emergency relief. David's pause suggests he wasn't expecting detailed questions about the chronology. Your Honor, my client disputes the validity of those early violations. The city's enforcement has been inconsistent and arbitrary, creating confusion about which standards applied to these properties. His response is technically correct, but doesn't answer my question about his client's specific actions. That doesn't address my question, counselor. Did Thompson-Hayes Real Estate respond to the March violation notice, and if so, what was the substance of that response? I maintain steady eye contact, using the technique Judge Williams taught me for keeping attorneys focused on facts rather than rhetoric. Victoria stops typing and looks up sharply, apparently recognizing that her husband's smooth presentation has hit an obstacle. For the first time since entering the courtroom, she focuses completely on the legal proceeding, her business-trained mind probably calculating the implications of my probing questions. David shuffles through his documents, clearly searching for information he should have prepared in advance. Your Honor, I believe there was correspondence, but I don't have those specific documents with me today given the emergency nature of this hearing. His admission of unpreparedness undermines his request for immediate relief, and I see Victoria's expression tighten with displeasure. The foundation of David's emergency motion begins to crumble under basic scrutiny. If Thompson-Hayes Real Estate has been ignoring violation notices for over a year, their current crisis is self-created rather than the result of arbitrary city enforcement. Emergency injunctive relief requires clean hands and genuine urgency, neither of which appears present in this case. Mr. Crawford, please present the city's position, I direct, giving the city attorney an opportunity to respond to what I suspect are weak arguments from the plaintiff. Robert approaches the podium with the measured confidence of someone whose case is built on solid documentation rather than courtroom theatrics. As Robert begins outlining the city's enforcement actions, I notice Victoria whispering urgently to the man beside her, her composed facade finally showing cracks of genuine concern. Whatever she expected from this emergency hearing, it wasn't a judge who would dig into the details of her company's compliance history. Robert Crawford methodically presents the city's documentation, each violation notice carefully time-stamped and photographed. The evidence paints a damning picture of Thompson-Hayes Real Estate's operations over the past 18 months. Properties with broken heating systems in January, leaking roofs that damaged tenant belongings, electrical code violations that could have caused fires. This isn't bureaucratic nitpicking, these are serious safety hazards affecting real people's lives. I watch Victoria's reaction as Robert displays photographs of a rental property on Elm Street where her company failed to address a sewage backup for 3 weeks. Tenants, including 2 families with young children, were forced to live with unsanitary conditions while Thompson-Hayes ignored repeated complaints. Victoria's composed mask slips slightly as she recognizes the property, her fingers gripping her phone with enough force to whiten her knuckles. Your Honor, Robert continues, the city has been more than patient with Thompson-Hayes Real Estate. We've extended deadlines, offered payment plans for fines, and provided multiple opportunities for voluntary compliance. The company has consistently chosen to ignore our outreach efforts. He places a thick folder on the evidence table. This contains 47 separate communications from the city to Thompson-Hayes over the past year and a half. 31 of these communications received no response whatsoever. David shifts uncomfortably at the plaintiff's table, clearly realizing his emergency motion is built on quicksand. The narrative he presented about arbitrary enforcement crumbles against the methodical documentation Robert provides. These aren't surprise attacks on an innocent business, they're the inevitable consequences of systematic negligence. Mr. Crawford, I ask, what specific relief is the city seeking in this matter? The question focuses everyone's attention on the practical outcomes, rather than the blame-shifting rhetoric that has dominated the hearing so far. Your Honor, the city seeks compliance with existing building codes and payment of accumulated fines totaling $67,000. We're also requesting oversight of Thompson-Hayes properties for the next 2 years to ensure ongoing compliance with safety regulations. Robert's response is measured and reasonable, focused on protecting tenants rather than punishing the company. Victoria leans forward in the gallery, her business instincts clearly calculating the financial implications of the city's demands. $67,000 in fines, plus the cost of bringing all properties into compliance, plus 2 years of enhanced oversight. The emergency injunction she hoped would stop the city's enforcement actions has instead provided a public forum for documenting her company's failures. Mr. Hayes, I turn back to the plaintiff's attorney. Given the evidence presented by the city, on what legal basis do you argue that Thompson-Hayes Real Estate is entitled to emergency injunctive relief? My question cuts through the remaining pretense, forcing David to address the fundamental weakness in his client's position. David approaches the podium with noticeably less confidence than his opening presentation. Your Honor, while there may be legitimate violations, the city's sudden acceleration of enforcement actions suggests an improper motive. Thompson-Hayes has been operating in Cedar Rapids for over a decade without these types of issues. His argument sounds hollow after Robert's documentation of 18 months of ignored warnings. Counselor, are you arguing that your client should be exempt from building codes because they've previously violated them without consequence? My question draws a sharp look from Victoria, who apparently recognizes the logical trap David has walked into. Even with limited legal knowledge, she can see that her husband is arguing for special treatment rather than equal enforcement. Not exempt, Your Honor, but entitled to reasonable notice and fair enforcement procedures. David's retreat from his original position confirms what everyone in the courtroom now understands: Thompson-Hayes Real Estate has no legitimate basis for emergency relief. The courtroom falls silent as I review my notes, considering the appropriate response to what amounts to a frivolous emergency motion. Victoria stops typing entirely, her attention focused completely on the judicial process for the first time since entering the room. The confident woman who texted me about my dead-end job 12 hours ago is watching her family business face serious legal and financial consequences. Based on the evidence presented today, I find that Thompson-Hayes Real Estate has failed to demonstrate any basis for emergency injunctive relief. The city's enforcement actions appear measured, well-documented, and entirely appropriate given the company's failure to respond to numerous violation notices. My ruling is straightforward, but its implications will reverberate through Victoria's business operations for months. Furthermore, I continue, I'm troubled by the suggestion that long-standing violations should be excused because they weren't previously enforced. Building codes exist to protect public safety, not to provide businesses with optional guidelines they can ignore when convenient. Victoria's face pales as the full impact of my ruling becomes clear. Not only has her emergency motion failed, but I've created a judicial record that will make future appeals extremely difficult. Any reviewing court will see that Thompson-Hayes Real Estate had every opportunity to comply voluntarily and chose instead to gamble on avoiding consequences. Mr. Crawford, please prepare a compliance timeline with specific deadlines for addressing each violation. I want monthly progress reports filed with the court, and I'm scheduling a status conference for 6 weeks from today. My directive ensures continued judicial oversight, exactly what Victoria hoped to avoid by seeking emergency relief. Hayes, your client has 30 days to file a response to the city's compliance demands. If Thompson-Hayes chooses to negotiate a settlement, I encourage good faith discussions focused on tenant safety rather than legal technicalities. I give David an opportunity to salvage something from this disaster, but my tone makes clear that continued obstruction won't be tolerated. As I prepare to adjourn the hearing, Victoria rises from the gallery and approaches her husband at the plaintiff's table. Her whispered conversation is urgent and animated, clearly expressing displeasure with both the outcome and David's handling of the case. The woman who dominated our family dynamics through sheer force of personality is discovering that courtrooms operate by different rules. This matter is continued pending compliance review. Court is adjourned. I bring down the gavel, officially ending the emergency hearing that has exposed Thompson-Hayes Real Estate's systematic misconduct to judicial scrutiny. The courtroom empties slowly, with David and his associates gathering their materials in obvious defeat. Victoria remains in animated conversation with several people I don't recognize, probably business partners or investors concerned about the financial implications of today's ruling. Her confident facade has been replaced by the focused intensity of someone managing a genuine crisis. I return to my chambers, closing the door behind me as the weight of what just occurred begins to settle. Victoria attended a court hearing where her sister presided as judge, never recognizing the woman she regularly dismisses as a failure. The irony is almost overwhelming, but it's complicated by genuine concern about the housing conditions documented in Robert's presentation. Lisa knocks on my chamber door, entering with her usual efficiency. Judge Thompson, there's a reporter from the Cedar Rapids Gazette asking about the Thompson-Hayes hearing. Apparently they've been investigating complaints about rental property conditions. Lisa's news adds another layer of complexity to Victoria's problems. Legal defeat is embarrassing, but public exposure of tenant exploitation could destroy her company's reputation permanently. Tell them I can't comment on pending litigation, but they're welcome to review the public court records. I respond, maintaining the judicial neutrality required even when the case involves family members. The reporter's interest suggests that Victoria's problems extend beyond today's hearing into broader community concerns about housing quality. My phone buzzes with another text message, and I check the screen expecting routine court business. Instead, I see Victoria's name with a message that makes my stomach tighten. Emergency at office. David completely botched the hearing. Judge was totally unreasonable. Need all hands to figure out damage control. She's texting me about the hearing where I was the judge, seeking sympathy from the sister she believes is serving coffee at Murphy's Diner. The disconnect between Victoria's reality and the truth has never been more stark. She's asking for emotional support from the judge, who just ruled against her, without any awareness of the connection. 8 years of careful separation between my two identities has created a situation so surreal it feels like fiction. I walk to my window overlooking the town square, where Murphy's Diner shows signs of the afternoon rush beginning. Grace will be managing the lunch crowd with her usual combination of efficiency and warmth, treating each customer with genuine respect regardless of their occupation or social status. The contrast with the world Victoria inhabits, where people's worth is measured by their professional achievements and financial success, couldn't be more pronounced. The afternoon stretches ahead with routine administrative tasks, but my concentration is shattered by the morning's events. How do I respond to Victoria's text without revealing my role in her legal disaster? How do I navigate family conversations about her business problems when I'm the judge overseeing her compliance requirements? The careful balance I've maintained between my two identities is about to become impossible to sustain. Emma Rodriguez calls as I'm reviewing case files, her prosecutor's instincts immediately detecting something unusual in my voice. Rebecca, you sound stressed, rough day in court. Emma has known me since law school, and she's one of the few people who understands both the demands of judicial work and the complexities of family relationships. You could say that. I just presided over an emergency hearing involving my sister's real estate company. She was sitting in the gallery the entire time, never recognizing me. The words sound absurd, even as I say them, like something from a legal thriller rather than small-town reality. Emma's silence stretches for several seconds before she responds. Victoria doesn't know you're a judge. After 5 years on the bench, her incredulity mirrors my own feelings about the situation's impossibility. She thinks I dropped out of law school and work full-time at Murphy's Diner. The whole family believes I'm a failure who couldn't handle the pressure of legal education. Explaining the deception to someone outside the situation makes its complexity more apparent. 8 years of lies have created a reality so divorced from truth that revealing it will require dismantling everyone's understanding of who I am. Rebecca, this can't continue. You're going to have to recuse yourself from any future proceedings involving Thompson-Hayes, and Victoria is going to find out eventually. Court records are public, and if there's media attention, Emma's practical legal mind immediately identifies the ethical and practical problems created by my family's ignorance of my real profession. The conversation with Emma crystallizes the impossible position I've created. Judicial ethics require disclosure of conflicts of interest, but revealing my relationship to the plaintiff will expose 8 years of deception to my entire family. Victoria's business problems are serious enough to generate ongoing litigation, making my recusal necessary, but also guaranteed to raise questions I'm not prepared to answer. That evening, I drive to Murphy's Diner for my regular Thursday shift, the familiar routine offering comfort after the day's complications. Grace greets me with her usual warm smile, but her expression shifts to concern when she sees my face. Honey, you look like you've been wrestling with the devil himself. Bad day at the courthouse? Something like that, I reply, tying my apron around my waist and checking the evening specials Grace has written on the whiteboard. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans. Comfort food for a community that values substance over sophistication. Grace's wisdom, earned through 40 years of serving the public, has always provided perspective when my professional responsibilities feel overwhelming. You know, Rebecca, secrets have a way of revealing themselves when the time is right. Forcing them out usually creates more problems than letting them surface naturally. Her observation hits uncomfortably close to home. What if the secret is protecting people from getting hurt? I ask, wiping down tables while the dinner crowd begins arriving. Courthouse staff, city employees, and regular citizens fill the red vinyl booths, creating the diverse community mix that drew me to municipal court work in the first place. Protecting them, or protecting yourself? Grace's question stops me mid-wipe, her gentle challenge forcing me to examine motivations I've avoided confronting for 8 years. Sometimes what we think is kindness is really fear dressed up in good intentions. The evening shift passes quietly, giving me time to think while serving familiar faces and making small talk about weather, local sports, and community events. None of these people care that I'm a judge. They value the friendly service and genuine conversation that makes Murphy's Diner feel like an extension of their living rooms. Around 9 o'clock, as I'm refilling coffee for a retired teacher who comes in every Thursday, my phone buzzes with another text from Victoria. Talked to Dad about the hearing today. He thinks we should sue that judge for bias. David says she was completely unreasonable and probably corrupt. This whole town is backwards. The message includes several laughing crying emojis, as if her legal troubles are primarily a source of amusement rather than serious professional consequences. The accusation of corruption stings more than it should, given the source, but it also reveals how completely Victoria misunderstands what occurred in the courtroom. David's presentation was legally deficient and factually weak. Any competent judge would have reached the same conclusion. Her assumption that adverse rulings indicate bias or corruption demonstrates the entitled mindset that created her compliance problems in the first place. I finish my shift at Murphy's and drive home to my modest apartment, the familiar routine of changing out of my uniform and reviewing tomorrow's court calendar providing structure for chaotic thoughts. The living room's simple furniture and overflowing bookshelves reflect priorities that have nothing to do with impressing others or maintaining social status. This is the life I've chosen, combining meaningful work with genuine community connections. The next morning brings a new complication when Lisa informs me that Thompson-Hayes Real Estate has filed a motion for my recusal, citing apparent bias and procedural irregularities in yesterday's emergency hearing. David's response to losing is apparently to attack the judge rather than address his client's underlying problems. "Have you reviewed the motion?" I ask Lisa, settling into my desk chair with the morning's coffee. The familiar rhythm of judicial work provides stability while personal and professional complications swirl around me. It's mostly rhetoric about small-town bias and unfair treatment of out-of-town businesses. Lisa replies diplomatically, nothing that looks like legitimate grounds for recusal, but they're clearly fishing for a different judge. Her assessment confirms my initial impression that David is trying to escape the consequences of his poor preparation rather than addressing substantive legal issues. The recusal motion creates an opportunity to step away from Victoria's case before the situation becomes more complicated, but granting it would validate David's baseless accusations and potentially encourage similar tactics in future cases. Judges can't recuse themselves simply because losing parties attack their decisions. The judicial system would collapse under such pressure. Schedule a hearing on the recusal motion for next week. I decide, I want both parties to present their arguments on the record. The hearing will provide an opportunity to address David's accusations directly while maintaining appropriate judicial decorum. As Lisa leaves to schedule the hearing, I consider calling Victoria to warn her about the potential media attention surrounding her business problems, but our relationship doesn't include conversations about legal matters. She's never asked for my opinion about anything more complex than restaurant recommendations, viewing me as too unsuccessful and uneducated to offer meaningful advice about serious matters. The morning's routine court calendar includes several cases that highlight the real-world impact of municipal regulations. A landlord who installed proper smoke detectors after city violations, preventing a potential tragedy, a restaurant that improved food safety practices after health department citations, protecting customers from illness. These aren't bureaucratic power trips, they're examples of how consistent enforcement protects community welfare. The contrast with Victoria's case is striking. While other business owners respond to violations by correcting problems, Thompson-Hayes Real Estate has chosen litigation and public relations management over tenant safety. The pattern reveals a fundamental disconnect between Victoria's self-image as a successful professional and her actual business practices. By lunchtime, 3 different people have mentioned seeing the Cedar Rapids Gazette's article about rental property conditions, with specific references to Thompson-Hayes Real Estate. The reporter's investigation has expanded beyond yesterday's court hearing into broader questions about housing quality and landlord accountability. Victoria's problems are becoming public in ways that legal maneuvering can't control. I walked to Murphy's for a quick lunch, needing Grace's perspective on the increasingly complicated situation. The diner is busy with the usual mix of courthouse employees, city workers, and downtown business owners, creating the cross-section of community life that makes small cities function effectively. Grace serves me a bowl of her famous vegetable soup without being asked, recognizing my need for comfort food and familiar surroundings. "You still wrestling with that secret, honey?" she asks, settling into the booth across from me during a brief lull in the lunch rush. "It's getting more complicated by the hour," I admit, stirring the soup while avoiding eye contact. The person the secret is protecting is making it harder to keep protecting them. Grace's understanding nod suggests she's familiar with such moral dilemmas from her own life experience. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for someone is stop enabling their illusions, Grace observes, watching me carefully. Sounds like your family might need to learn who you really are, even if the truth hurts initially. Her words echo Emma's advice from yesterday, creating a consensus among the people who know me best. The afternoon brings news that makes continued secrecy impossible. Lisa informs me that Victoria's recusal motion has attracted attention from the State Judicial Ethics Commission, which is now reviewing the matter to ensure appropriate handling of potential conflicts of interest. The Commission's involvement transforms a local legal dispute into a matter of statewide judicial oversight. Judge Thompson, I need to ask directly, Lisa says, closing my office door behind her. Do you have any personal relationship with the parties in Thompson-Hayes versus the City of Cedar Rapids? Her question is required by judicial ethics rules, but it forces me to confront the deception I've maintained even within my professional environment. Victoria Thompson-Hayes is my sister, I admit, the words feeling strange after years of compartmentalization. However, she's unaware of my position on the bench and believes I work only at Murphy's Diner. Lisa's expression shifts from surprise to concern as the implications become clear. Your Honor, this creates serious ethical issues. You should have disclosed this relationship immediately and recused yourself from the case. Lisa's response is professionally correct, but it also confirms that my attempt to protect Victoria has instead created greater problems for everyone involved. The Ethics Commission will require complete disclosure of my relationship with the plaintiff, including explanation of why I didn't recuse myself initially. Victoria's motion for recusal, ironically, has triggered the investigation that will expose our family relationship and 8 years of maintained deception. The truth I've protected so carefully is about to emerge through the worst possible circumstances. I spend the rest of the afternoon preparing my response to the Ethics Commission, documenting my relationship with Victoria and explaining my failure to recuse immediately. The statement reads like a confession of professional misjudgment, complicated by personal family dynamics. Whatever happens next, my careful separation of personal and professional identities has ended permanently. That evening, I skip my usual shift at Murphy's and instead drive to the overlook above Cedar Rapids, where the city lights spread below like a circuit board of human activity. Each light represents families, businesses, and communities connected by shared geography and common needs for safety, fairness, and dignity in their daily lives. My work as a judge serves these connections, helping resolve conflicts and enforce standards that protect everyone's welfare. Victoria's text interrupts my reflection. David thinks we should hire a private investigator to look into that judge's background. She's probably taking bribes from the city or has some other conflict of interest. Nobody rules against emergency motions unless something fishy is going on. The message reveals how little Victoria understands about judicial process and professional ethics, but it also previews her likely reaction when our relationship becomes public knowledge. The private investigator Victoria wants to hire will discover within hours what 8 years of family deception has concealed. Judge Rebecca Thompson and Victoria's disappointing younger sister are the same person, and tomorrow's Ethics Commission inquiry will make that connection public record. The revelation will destroy not only Victoria's assumptions about my life, but also her ability to blame external forces for her business problems. I drive home through downtown Cedar Rapids, passing Murphy's Diner, where Grace is closing up for the evening, and the courthouse where tomorrow's proceedings will finally force honesty into relationships built on comfortable lies. The two buildings represent the dual aspects of my life that have remained separate for 8 years, but which circumstances now require me to integrate publicly. The apartment feels smaller than usual as I prepare for what may be the last evening before my family discovers the truth about my professional identity. 8 years of carefully maintained deception will end tomorrow, not through my choice, but through the natural consequences of trying to hide fundamental aspects of my life from people who should have known better. The State Judicial Ethics Commission's investigation moves faster than I anticipated. By Tuesday morning, Commissioner Janet Walsh calls my chambers directly, her tone professional but unmistakably serious. Judge Thompson, we need to discuss the Thompson-Hayes matter immediately. Can you be in Des Moines tomorrow at 10? The drive to the state capitol gives me 2 hours to rehearse explanations that sound increasingly inadequate with each repetition. How do I justify 8 years of family deception to ethics commissioners trained to detect judicial misconduct? How do I explain that protecting my sister's feelings seemed more important than transparent judicial administration? The Ethics Commission occupies a sterile conference room in the state office building where 3 commissioners sit behind a polished table reviewing thick folders of documentation. Commissioner Walsh, a former Iowa Supreme Court justice, leads the inquiry with the methodical precision I remember from her published opinions. Commissioner Davis, a legal ethics professor from Drake University, takes detailed notes throughout my testimony. Commissioner Martinez, a practicing attorney specializing in judicial conduct, asks the pointed questions that reveal the full scope of my ethical violations. Judge Thompson, Commissioner Walsh begins, help us understand how you failed to recognize an obvious conflict of interest when your sister appeared as a party in your courtroom. Her question assumes facts not in evidence, but I understand the investigative strategy. They want to determine whether my failure to recuse was intentional misconduct or merely poor judgment. Commissioner Victoria Thompson-Hayes has no knowledge of my judicial position. Our family believes I work exclusively at Murphy's Diner and dropped out of law school 8 years ago. My explanation sounds absurd in the formal setting, like a plot device from a television legal drama, rather than actual circumstances. Commissioner Davis looks up from his notes, incredulity evident in his expression. You're telling us that your immediate family doesn't know you're a sitting judge. After 5 years on the bench, his question highlights the implausibility of my situation while avoiding direct accusations of dishonesty. That's correct, Commissioner. I've maintained separate personal and professional identities since beginning my legal career. The sanitized language makes my deception sound like a strategic career choice rather than an elaborate family lie. Commissioner Martinez leans forward, her prosecutor's instincts engaging with the factual inconsistencies. Judge Thompson, your sister filed documents listing her address as 1247 Westfield Drive in Cedar Rapids. That's your parents' home address, where family mail is delivered. Are you suggesting she's never seen correspondence from the court system or state agencies addressed to Judge Rebecca Thompson? The question exposes a vulnerability I hadn't considered. Official mail from the administrative office of the courts, the State Bar Association, and various judicial organizations has been delivered to my parents' address for years. Someone in the family must have noticed judicial correspondence, even if they didn't understand its significance. Commissioner, I changed my mailing address for official correspondence 3 years ago to avoid exactly that problem. However, it's possible that some earlier documents reached my family. My admission reveals another layer of deception, showing that I actively managed information flow to maintain the family fiction. So you were aware that maintaining this dual identity created ethical risks, but you chose to continue the deception rather than address the conflict directly. Commissioner Walsh's restatement transforms my family protection into willful misconduct, the kind of behavior that ends judicial careers. The next 2 hours involve detailed review of every decision I made in the Thompson-Hayes case, with particular focus on my failure to disclose the family relationship immediately. The commissioners examine my ruling line by line, searching for evidence of bias or preferential treatment. Their analysis reveals something I hadn't recognized. My desire to appear impartial actually made me stricter with Victoria's case than similar matters, overcompensating for the family connection in ways that created different ethical problems. Judge Thompson, Commissioner Martinez observes, your ruling in Thompson-Hayes was harsher than typical first-time enforcement cases. Were you attempting to prove your impartiality by being particularly severe with your sister's company? Her question identifies the psychological trap I fell into, where fear of appearing biased led to actual bias in the opposite direction. Commissioner, I treated Thompson-Hayes exactly as I would any other plaintiff presenting weak legal arguments with poor factual support. My defensive response sounds unconvincing even to myself, confirming the commissioner's suspicions about my compromised judgment. By the end of the hearing, the commissioner's recommendations are clear without being explicitly stated. I need to recuse myself from all Thompson-Hayes related matters, issue a public disclosure of the family relationship, and accept formal censure for failing to identify the conflict initially. The alternative is resignation from the bench and potential disciplinary proceedings through the state bar. The drive back to Cedar Rapids provides time to consider how Victoria will react when the Ethics Commission's findings become public. Her assumption that corrupt judges and biased enforcement explain her legal troubles will be replaced by the knowledge that her despised younger sister presided over her case. The revelation will destroy not only her illusions about my life, but also her ability to blame external forces for business problems created by systematic negligence. I arrive at Murphy's for my Thursday evening shift to find Grace reorganizing the storage room with unusual intensity. Physical activity often reflects emotional processing for her, and I recognize the signs of someone working through difficult thoughts. "Rough week, honey?" she asks without looking up from inventory sheets. "The Ethics Commission investigation is moving forward. Everything's going to come out soon." I tie my apron and begin preparing for the dinner rush, finding comfort in routine tasks while my professional life undergoes systematic examination. Grace straightens slowly, her arthritis evident in careful movements that belie her energetic personality. "You know, Rebecca, I've been thinking about something my grandmother used to say. She'd tell me that secrets are like debts. The longer you carry them, the more interest they accumulate." Her wisdom carries the weight of decades spent observing human nature through the lens of community service. What if revealing the secret hurts people more than keeping it? I ask, wiping down tables while mentally rehearsing conversations with family members who don't know they'll need to revise their understanding of the past 8 years. "Honey, sometimes the kindest thing we can do for someone is stop protecting them from reality. Your sister might be angry initially, but she deserves to know who you really are." Grace's observation echoes Emma's advice, creating consensus among people whose judgment I trust. The evening shift passes with unusual quiet, giving me time to think, while serving familiar faces who treat me with genuine warmth regardless of my professional achievements. These relationships, built on daily interactions rather than resume credentials, represent the authentic connections that drew me to municipal court work initially. None of these people need to be impressed by my judicial title, they value the friendly service and genuine conversation that makes Murphy's feel like an extension of their homes. Around 8 o'clock, my phone buzzes with a text from Victoria that makes my stomach tighten. "Private investigator found some interesting information about that judge. Turns out she's been involved in several controversial rulings. We might have grounds for appeal based on her track record." The message reveals Victoria's continued assumption that external corruption, rather than her own business practices, explains her legal troubles. The private investigator Victoria hired will discover within days what 8 years of family deception has concealed. Judge Rebecca Thompson's public record includes commendations for innovative community justice programs, recognition from tenant advocacy groups for fair enforcement of housing codes, and consistent ratings of highly qualified from the State Bar Association. The controversial rulings Victoria mentions are actually examples of principled decisions that protected vulnerable citizens from exploitation. Friday morning brings the inevitable conclusion when Lisa informs me that a process server delivered subpoenas to Thompson-Hayes Real Estate requesting all communications with private investigators regarding my background. The Ethics Commission's investigation has expanded to include Victoria's attempts to discredit the judge, creating additional legal problems for her company while ensuring that our family relationship becomes part of the public record. Judge Thompson, there's something else, Lisa continues, her expression showing concern about delivering additional bad news. The Cedar Rapids Gazette called asking for comment about allegations that you've been hiding your judicial position from family members involved in litigation before your court. The media attention I've dreaded for 8 years is finally materializing, transforming private family dysfunction into public entertainment. I spend the morning preparing my formal recusal from all Thompson-Hayes related matters while drafting the disclosure statement required by the Ethics Commission. The documents read like an admission of professional misjudgment complicated by bizarre family dynamics. Whatever happens next, my careful separation of personal and professional identities has ended permanently. Michael Chen, from the Cedar Rapids Gazette, arrives at the courthouse during lunch, his investigative journalist instincts already focused on the human interest angles that make local news compelling. Michael has covered municipal court proceedings for 3 years, but our interactions have been limited to brief exchanges about case scheduling and procedural questions. Judge Thompson, I'm working on a story about family relationships in local government. Can you comment on your connection to Thompson-Hayes Real Estate? Michael's question is professionally phrased, but his presence in my chambers confirms that the story will be published regardless of my cooperation. Mr. Chen, I've filed appropriate disclosures with the Ethics Commission and recused myself from the Thompson-Hayes matter. I can't comment further on pending litigation. My response follows standard judicial protocol, but it also acknowledges the family relationship without providing details that might compromise ongoing proceedings. Off the record, Judge Thompson, how long has your family been unaware of your position on the bench? Michael's follow-up question reveals the scope of his investigation while offering protection for sensitive information. Off the record, Mr. Chen, family dynamics are complicated. Sometimes protecting people from difficult truths creates bigger problems than addressing them directly. My answer provides context without confirming specific facts, but Michael's expression suggests he already knows most of the story. The afternoon brings a call from Emma Rodriguez, whose prosecutorial experience provides perspective on the media attention surrounding my situation. Rebecca, the legal community is talking about your ethics investigation. Most people are sympathetic, understanding that family relationships create impossible conflicts sometimes. Emma's reassurance helps, but I know that judicial careers rarely survive public scrutiny of personal conduct. Emma, what would you do if you were in my position? I ask, genuinely uncertain about the best path forward. The carefully maintained balance between my two identities has collapsed so completely that rebuilding requires fundamental changes to relationships spanning nearly a decade. I'd tell Victoria the truth before she reads it in the newspaper. Emma responds immediately. She's going to be angry regardless, but hearing it from you gives her a chance to process the information privately before it becomes public knowledge. Emma's advice aligns with Grace's earlier observations about the accumulating cost of maintained secrets. That evening, I drive past Victoria and David's house in the affluent Westwood neighborhood, noting the perfectly manicured lawn and expensive cars that reflect their professional success. The contrast with my modest apartment and 8-year-old Honda highlights the different values that have shaped our respective life choices. Victoria measures achievement through external markers of status and wealth. I find satisfaction in meaningful work and authentic community connections. My phone rings as I'm debating whether to knock on Victoria's door, and her name appears on the screen. Becca, can you come over? I need to talk to someone about this legal nightmare, and David is being completely useless. Victoria's request for support from the sister she regularly dismisses creates an opportunity to reveal the truth before media coverage makes disclosure involuntary. I'll be right there, I respond, turning into Victoria's driveway while mentally rehearsing conversations I've avoided for 8 years.
Yeah.
Victoria meets me at the front door, wearing yoga clothes and an expression of frustrated exhaustion. Her usually perfect appearance shows signs of stress, with dark circles under her eyes and hair pulled back in a casual ponytail. The woman who dominated our family dynamics through sheer force of personality looks genuinely vulnerable for the first time in memory. "Come in, I made coffee," she says, leading me toward the kitchen, where legal documents cover the granite countertop like evidence from a crime scene. This whole situation is insane. That judge is obviously corrupt or incompetent, and now there are ethics investigations and newspaper reporters asking questions about our business practices. The kitchen's expensive appliances and designer finishes reflect Victoria's taste for luxury, but the atmosphere feels cold compared to Murphy's Diner's warm familiarity. I sit at the breakfast bar while Victoria paces, her nervous energy filling the space between us with tension I know will increase dramatically within the next few minutes. "Victoria, there's something I need to tell you about the judge in your case." The words come out more calmly than I expected, my voice steady, despite the magnitude of what I'm about to reveal. "Don't tell me you know her," Victoria responds, continuing to pace while organizing papers with nervous efficiency. "This town is so small that everyone's connected somehow. Probably went to high school with her or something equally ridiculous." "I am her," I say simply, the three words hanging in the air like smoke from an explosion. Victoria stops pacing, her hands frozen over a stack of legal briefs. "What do you mean, you are her?" The question comes out slowly, her mind clearly struggling to process information that contradicts 8 years of established family narrative. "I'm Judge Rebecca Thompson. I've been sitting on the municipal court bench for 5 years. My explanation is direct and factual, avoiding the emotional complications that will inevitably follow." Victoria's face cycles through confusion, disbelief, and dawning comprehension as the implications become clear. "That's impossible. You work at Murphy's Diner, you dropped out of law school. She trails off, unable to complete the sentence that would dismiss me as the family failure. "Graduated from law school 8 years ago, passed the bar exam, and was appointed to the municipal court bench 5 years ago. I kept working at Murphy's 2 days a week because I enjoy the community connections." My matter-of-fact tone contrasts sharply with Victoria's obvious emotional turmoil. "You've been lying to us for 8 years. Victoria's voice rises with each word, her shock transforming into anger. "Mom and Dad think you're a failure, and you just let them believe it. You let me believe it. I didn't set out to deceive anyone." The misunderstanding started small and grew larger over time until correcting it seemed impossible. My explanation sounds weak even to myself, the accumulated deception too significant to justify with good intentions. Victoria sits down heavily at the breakfast bar, her hands trembling as she reaches for her coffee cup. "Do you have any idea how this makes me look? I've been complaining about you to everyone, saying you waste your potential, calling you a disappointment, and you're a judge." The conversation continues for 2 hours, with Victoria alternating between anger at my deception and embarrassment about her treatment of me over the years. She reviews countless family gatherings where she dismissed my opinions, professional advice she sought from others, while assuming I had nothing valuable to contribute, and public comments about my lack of ambition that now seem absurd in light of my actual career. "Becca, this changes everything," Victoria says finally, her anger giving way to exhaustion. "I can't appeal your ruling because you're my sister. I can't claim bias because I didn't know who you were, and everyone's going to know that I've been treating a sitting judge like a family failure for years." "Victoria, the appeal issue is more complicated than that. The Ethics Commission is requiring full disclosure of our relationship, and there may be grounds for appeal based on my failure to recuse initially. I try to provide accurate legal information while avoiding false reassurance about her business problems, so my legal troubles are worse because my sister decided to play dress-up as a judge." Victoria's characterization of my judicial career as pretense reveals how difficult it will be for her to accept this new reality. "Your legal troubles exist because Thompson-Hayes Real Estate ignored building code violations for 18 months, I respond, my patience finally wearing thin. The judge's identity doesn't change the underlying fact about tenant safety and property maintenance. Victoria's expression hardens as she realizes that her business problems won't disappear with the revelation of our relationship. Are you going to lecture me about property management now? Is that part of your secret judge identity? I'm going to tell you the same thing I tell everyone who appears in my courtroom. Building codes exist to protect people's safety and welfare. Ignoring them creates real consequences that go beyond legal technicalities. My response maintains the professional tone I've developed over 5 years of judicial service, but Victoria clearly interprets it as sisterly condescension. The conversation deteriorates from there, with Victoria unable to separate her embarrassment about our relationship from her anger about her business problems. By the time I leave her house, near midnight, she's convinced that my deception has somehow created her legal troubles, rather than simply expose them to judicial scrutiny. I drive home through empty downtown streets, passing Murphy's Diner, where Grace has left the night lights on, and the courthouse, where tomorrow's proceedings will continue without my involvement in the Thompson-Hayes matter. The revelation I've avoided for 8 years has finally occurred, but Victoria's reaction confirms my worst fears about the impact on family relationships. The weekend passes in relative quiet, giving me time to prepare for Monday's inevitable media coverage and continued Ethics Commission investigation. Michael Chen's story will appear in Tuesday's Cedar Rapids Gazette, transforming private family dysfunction into public entertainment for readers who enjoy stories about local government officials caught in embarrassing situations. Sunday evening brings a family dinner invitation that I suspect will be the last normal interaction with my parents before they learn the truth about my career. The invitation comes from Mom via text message, family dinner at 6. Victoria has something important to discuss with everyone. The message suggests that Victoria has decided to reveal my judicial position to our parents, rather than let them discover it through newspaper coverage. I arrive at my parents' house on Westfield Drive to find Victoria's car already in the driveway, along with vehicles belonging to my aunt and I. The gathering is larger than usual family dinners, suggesting that Victoria has planned a dramatic revelation rather than a quiet conversation. The woman who has orchestrated family dynamics for years is apparently determined to control the narrative about my deception. Mom greets me at the door with her usual mixture of affection and concern. Rebecca, honey, you look tired. Are you working too many shifts at the diner? Her question, asked with genuine maternal worry, will seem absurd within the hour. Something like that, Mom, I reply, following her toward the dining room, where Dad is setting up additional chairs around the extended table. The formal arrangement suggests an important announcement, probably Victoria's strategy for managing the family's reaction to learning about my actual profession. The dinner conversation proceeds normally through the main course, with typical family updates about work, health, and community events. Victoria appears unusually quiet, clearly preparing for the revelation she's planned. Dad mentions reading about problems with local rental properties, unknowingly referencing the case where I presided over his older daughter's legal defeat. There's something I need to tell everyone. Victoria announces as Mom serves dessert, her voice carrying the authority she's always used to command family attention. It's about Rebecca and her work situation. The phrasing makes my career sound like a problem to be addressed rather than an achievement to be celebrated. Oh, honey, please don't lecture your sister about getting a better job, Mom responds, misinterpreting Victoria's intentions. Rebecca knows we worry about her future, but she seems happy at the diner. Mom's protective response reveals her genuine affection despite her concerns about my apparent lack of ambition. Mom, Rebecca isn't just working at the diner, Victoria continues, clearly enjoying her role as the bearer of shocking news. She's been lying to all of us for 8 years. She's actually a judge. The revelation lands like a bomb in the quiet dining room, creating silence punctuated only by the grandfather clock in the hallway. Dad's fork clatters against his dessert plate, the sound unnaturally loud in the stunned silence that follows Victoria's announcement. His weathered hands, steady through decades of accounting work, now shake slightly as he sets down his coffee cup and stares at me with an expression I've never seen before. "Rebecca is what?" The question comes out as barely a whisper, his voice cracking on my name. "She's Judge Rebecca Thompson," Victoria repeats, clearly relishing her role as the deliverer of earth-shattering news. "The same judge who ruled against my company last week. She's been lying to all of us for 8 years, letting us think she's a failure while she's been sitting on the bench making legal decisions that affect people's lives." Mom's hand flies to her chest, her breathing becoming shallow and rapid. "That's impossible. Rebecca dropped out of law school. She works at Murphy's Diner. We've visited her there." Her voice carries the desperate quality of someone clinging to a familiar reality that's disintegrating before her eyes. "I still work at Murphy's 2 days a week," I say quietly, my voice cutting through the family's collective shock. But Victoria is right about the rest. I graduated from law school 8 years ago and have been serving as a municipal court judge for the past 5 years. Uncle Robert, Dad's older brother who's always prided himself on reading people accurately, leans back in his chair with an expression of complete bewilderment. "Rebecca, why would you hide something like that from your family? Being a judge is an honor, something to be proud of." His confusion reflects the disconnect between normal family relationships and the complicated dynamics that made my deception seem necessary. Aunt Linda, Mom's sister who taught elementary school for 30 years, studies my face with the analytical skills she developed from working with children who weren't always truthful. "Honey, help us understand. What could possibly make you feel like you needed to lie about such an important part of your life?" Her question carries genuine concern rather than accusation, recognizing that my behavior suggests deeper family problems. The weight of 8 years of careful deception settles on my shoulders as I look around the table at faces showing various combinations of shock, hurt, and confusion. Dad's expression has shifted from disbelief to something approaching anger, his jaw tightening in the way it always did when he felt personally betrayed. Mom continues shaking her head slightly, as if physical motion might rearrange the information into something more comprehensible. "It started as a misunderstanding," I begin, choosing my words carefully, while knowing that no explanation will fully justify 8 years of systematic deception. "When I graduated from law school, the family was focused on Victoria's success at her Chicago firm. My achievements seemed small in comparison, so when I got the clerkship at municipal court, I didn't make a big announcement about it." "A misunderstanding." Dad's voice rises with each syllable, his accounting mind clearly calculating the numerous occasions when I could have corrected the family's assumptions. "Rebecca, we've had hundreds of conversations over the years. Thanksgiving dinners, birthday parties, family gatherings where we worried about your future and you said nothing." Victoria crosses her arms with the satisfied expression of someone whose point has been thoroughly validated. "See, she's been playing us for fools this entire time, making us feel sorry for her while she's actually more successful than any of us realized." Her characterization of my career as deception, rather than achievement, reveals how difficult it will be for the family to process this revelation constructively. "Victoria, that's not fair," Aunt Linda interjects, her teacher's instincts recognizing the destructive direction of the conversation. "Rebecca clearly felt like she had reasons for keeping this private. Maybe we should listen to what those reasons were before we start assigning blame." "The reasons don't matter," Victoria snaps, her anger building as she reviews 8 years of family interactions through the new lens of my hidden identity. She let Mom and Dad worry about her financial stability while she was making $60,000 a year as a judge. She accepted money from them for emergencies that probably weren't even real emergencies. "I never accepted money under false pretenses." I respond firmly, my patience with Victoria's characterizations finally wearing thin. "Every financial emergency I brought to the family was genuine, and I paid back every loan with interest." Dad runs his hands through his graying hair, a gesture I remember from my childhood when he was trying to solve particularly complex problems. Rebecca, I don't understand how this happened. When you started working at the diner, we assumed law school hadn't worked out. You never corrected that assumption, so we naturally concluded you'd decided legal work wasn't for you. You naturally concluded I was a failure. I correct him, my voice steady despite the emotional weight of the conversation. And after Victoria's success became the family's primary source of pride, correcting your assumptions seemed like it would only create more family tension. Mom finally speaks, her voice small and hurt. Rebecca, do you have any idea how many nights I lay awake worrying about your future? Wondering if we'd failed you somehow, if there was something we could have done differently to help you succeed. Her words carry the weight of maternal guilt accumulated over 8 years of believing her younger daughter had never reached her potential. The pain in Mom's voice cuts deeper than Victoria's anger or Dad's disappointment. Mom's love has always been unconditional, even when she worried about my choices, and knowing that my deception caused her years of unnecessary anxiety creates guilt I wasn't prepared to handle. Mom, I'm sorry, I say, reaching across the table to touch her hand. I never wanted to cause you pain. I just got trapped in a situation that grew bigger than I knew how to manage. The apology sounds inadequate, even as I speak it, unable to address the magnitude of concern my family has carried unnecessarily. Trapped, Victoria's voice drips with skepticism. You chose to lie every single day for 8 years. You chose to let us worry about you, to feel sorry for you, to treat you like you needed our help and guidance. That wasn't being trapped, Rebecca, that was being selfish. Uncle Robert raises his hand in the peacemaking gesture he's used to mediate family conflicts for decades. Victoria, I think we all need to take a step back here. Rebecca made some questionable choices, but attacking her isn't going to help us understand what happened or figure out how to move forward as a family. Move forward, Victoria laughs bitterly. Robert, she's been lying to us about fundamental aspects of her life for nearly a decade. She sat through family dinners where we discussed our careers and said nothing about hers. She listened to us give her advice about job hunting and financial planning while she was more professionally successful than most of us. How do we trust her about anything now? The question hangs in the air like smoke from an explosion, highlighting the trust issues that will complicate our family relationships for years to come. Victoria's points are accurate, even if her tone is harsh. I have participated in hundreds of family conversations where my silence created false impressions about my life circumstances. Victoria raises valid concerns. I acknowledge surprise by my ability to remain calm in the face of her escalating anger. I understand that my choices have damaged your trust, and I don't expect forgiveness to come easily or quickly. Dad leans forward, his expression showing the analytical thinking that made him successful in accounting. Rebecca, I need to understand something. When you were appointed to the bench 5 years ago, that was a public process. Your name was in the newspaper, there were probably ceremonies or public announcements. How did none of us hear about it? The question reveals another layer of deception I've avoided thinking about. I asked Judge Williams and the court administrator to keep the announcement low-key. I said I preferred privacy about the appointment, which they respected. My explanation shows the active steps I took to prevent family discovery, making my deception more intentional than I've admitted even to myself. So you specifically asked them to help you hide your appointment from your family. Mom's voice carries a note of hurt that cuts straight through my defenses. Rebecca, that suggests this wasn't just a misunderstanding that got out of hand. You deliberately concealed your success from the people who love you most. Aunt Linda tries again to redirect the conversation toward understanding rather than recrimination. Rebecca, honey, can you help us understand what made you feel like you needed to hide your achievements from your family? What were you afraid would happen if we knew the truth? The question forces me to confront motivations I've avoided examining for 8 years. I was afraid you'd see my appointment as less impressive than Victoria's career trajectory. Municipal court judges in small Iowa towns don't have the prestige of Chicago corporate attorneys. I thought the truth would just confirm that I was still the less successful daughter. Less successful, Dad's voice rises with genuine incredulity. Rebecca, being appointed as a judge at 32 years old is extraordinary. Most judges don't reach the bench until their 50s or 60s. We would have been incredibly proud of your achievement. Would you have been prouder of me than you were of Victoria? I asked, the question emerging from depths of sibling insecurity I thought I'd outgrown. Because every family conversation for the past 8 years has centered on Victoria's accomplishments, her salary increases, her professional recognition, her success stories. I didn't see room in the family narrative for a small-town judge who also serves coffee at a local diner. The admission creates another moment of uncomfortable silence as the family processes my perception of their favoritism toward Victoria. Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda exchange meaningful glances, clearly recognizing family dynamics that others have tried to ignore. Victoria's expression shifts slightly, her anger giving way to something that might be recognition or even guilt. Rebecca, are you saying you lied to us for 8 years because you were jealous of the attention I received? Her question strips away the complexity of family relationships, reducing my motivations to simple sibling rivalry. I'm saying I lied because I felt invisible in this family unless I was the object of your concern or pity. I respond, my voice carrying frustration that has been building for years. Being the disappointing daughter who needed help and guidance gave me a role in family dynamics. Being a successful professional would have made me irrelevant to conversations that always center on Victoria's latest achievements. Mom's eyes fill with tears as she absorbs the implications of my words. Rebecca, are you telling us that we made you feel like your accomplishments didn't matter? Her question reveals a parent's worst fear about accidentally damaging their child's self-worth through unconscious favoritism. You're telling us that our concern for your welfare was actually harmful to your sense of self-worth. Dad adds, his accounting mind struggling to balance the emotional equations involved in family relationships. I'm telling you that families can create dynamics where some achievements matter more than others. Where some children's success gets celebrated while others' accomplishments get overlooked. I explain, trying to help them understand without completely destroying their self-perception as loving parents. Victoria stands up abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. This is ridiculous. You're blaming us for your decision to lie. You're making yourself the victim in a situation where you've been deceiving people who love you. Her defensive anger suggests she recognizes some truth in my observations about family dynamics. I'm not making myself a victim, Victoria. I'm trying to explain how family relationships can become complicated in ways that create impossible situations. My response maintains the calm tone I've developed through years of judicial proceedings, but Victoria clearly interprets it as condescension. Impossible situations, Victoria's voice escalates with each word. The only impossible situation here is that my sister has been living a double life while letting her family worry about her unnecessarily. And now I find out she's the judge who ruled against my company, which creates a whole new set of legal and professional problems I have to address. Uncle Robert intervenes before the conversation deteriorates further. Victoria, I think we need to separate Rebecca's personal choices from your business legal issues. Those are two different problems that require different solutions. They're not separate problems when the judge who's been ruling against my business is my sister who's been lying to me for 8 years. Victoria retorts, her anger now focused on the practical implications of my revelation. Do you understand what this does to my credibility in the legal community? Do you realize how this makes me look professionally? Victoria, your credibility issues exist because Thompson-Hayes Real Estate ignored building code violations for 18 months. I respond, my judicial training taking over as personal emotions threaten to overwhelm the conversation. My identity doesn't change the facts about tenant safety or property maintenance standards. Don't lecture me about property management, Victoria snaps. You've been sitting in your courtroom making decisions about things you don't understand while pretending to be a diner waitress in your spare time. What kind of person maintains that level of deception? Aunt Linda stands up from her chair, her teacher's authority commanding attention from everyone at the table. That's enough. This conversation is becoming destructive, and we need to step back before people say things they'll regret permanently. Her intervention creates a pause in the escalating conflict, allowing rational thought to intrude on emotional reactions. Linda's right, Dad agrees, his accounting mind recognizing that continued argument will only deepen the family divisions. We all need time to process what we've learned tonight. This is too big to resolve in one conversation. Mom wipes her eyes with her napkin, her maternal instincts still focused on protecting both daughters despite her own hurt and confusion. Rebecca, I want you to know that we love you regardless of your profession or your choices. But I also need you to understand how betrayed we feel right now. I understand, Mom, I reply, meaning it despite my inability to change the past 8 years of deception. I never intended to hurt anyone, but I recognize that impact matters more than intention. Victoria gathers her purse and keys with sharp, angry movements. I need to leave before I say something I'll really regret. David and I have enough legal problems to deal with without adding family drama to the mix. She pauses at the dining room doorway, turning back to face me with an expression I can't quite read. Rebecca, I don't know how long it's going to take me to forgive this. You've made me look like a fool in front of my colleagues, my clients, and my community. The fact that you're my sister doesn't excuse what you've done to our family. Victoria's parting words carry the weight of permanent damage to our relationship, consequences I knew were possible but hoped to avoid. After Victoria leaves, the remaining family members sit in uncomfortable silence, processing the evening's revelations while the grandfather clock marks time with mechanical precision. The dining room feels smaller somehow, as if the walls have contracted around our diminished family circle. Rebecca, Dad says finally, his voice carrying the exhaustion of someone whose fundamental assumptions about reality have been challenged. I think we all need some time to think about what happened tonight and what it means for our family going forward. I agree, I respond, standing to clear dessert plates while seeking the comfort of routine tasks. I want you all to know that I'm sorry for the pain my choices have caused. I hope we can find a way to rebuild trust, but I understand that will take time. Uncle Robert helps me carry dishes to the kitchen, his presence offering quiet support without requiring conversation. Aunt Linda hugs me goodbye with the fierce affection of someone who understands that families survive crises through love rather than judgment. The drive home through Cedar Rapids provides time to reflect on the evening's consequences while familiar streetlights mark the route between my parents' house and my downtown apartment. Victoria's anger was expected, but the depth of Mom and Dad's hurt surprised me with its intensity. Their pain about worrying unnecessarily for 8 years feels heavier than Victoria's professional embarrassment. My apartment feels different when I arrive, as if the revelation has changed not only my family relationships but also my physical environment. The law books and judicial opinions that line my shelves were once symbols of secret professional achievement. Now they're evidence of elaborate deception that hurt people I love. The weekend passes quietly, giving me time to prepare for Monday's inevitable media coverage and continued professional consequences. Michael Chen's article appears in Tuesday's Cedar Rapids Gazette with the headline "Local Judge's Family Unaware of Judicial Position Transforming Private Family Dysfunction into Public Entertainment for Readers Who Enjoy Stories About Local Government Officials Caught in Embarrassing Situations." The article is fairly balanced, presenting facts without unnecessary editorial commentary, but the comments section online reveals the community's fascination with the human interest aspects of the story. Some readers express sympathy for family dynamics that created impossible choices, others criticize my deception as evidence of poor judgment that disqualifies me from judicial service. Wednesday brings a call from Commissioner Walsh informing me that the Ethics Commission has completed its investigation and reached its conclusions. Judge Thompson, we're recommending formal censure for failing to disclose the family relationship immediately, but we're not recommending removal from the bench, she explains, her tone professional but not unkind. The commission recognizes that your ruling in Thompson-Hayes was legally sound, and that your personal relationship with the plaintiff didn't influence your judicial decision-making. However, the failure to disclose creates ethical problems that require formal response. The censure will remain part of my permanent judicial record, but it won't end my career or prevent me from continuing to serve the community. Thursday evening finds me at Murphy's Diner for my regular shift, the familiar routine offering comfort after a week of professional and personal upheaval. Grace greets me with her usual warm smile, but her expression shows concern about the media attention surrounding my situation. "How are you holding up, honey?" she asks, settling into a booth during a brief lull in the dinner rush. "I saw the newspaper article. Must be difficult having your private business discussed publicly like that." "It's been a challenging week," I admit, refilling salt shakers while processing the events that have transformed my carefully maintained dual identity into public knowledge, "but maybe it's time for the truth to come out. Keeping secrets was becoming more difficult than dealing with their consequences." Grace nods with the understanding of someone who has observed human nature through decades of community service. Sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the most authentic relationships. "Your family might need time to adjust, but they'll come around eventually." "I hope so," I reply, though Victoria's parting words suggested that forgiveness might not come easily or quickly. "Right now I'm focused on doing my job well and proving that personal family complications don't affect my professional judgment." The evening shift passes with familiar faces and routine conversations that remind me why I chose to continue working at Murphy's despite my judicial responsibilities. These relationships, built on daily interactions rather than professional achievements, represent the authentic community connections that drew me to municipal court work initially. As I'm closing the diner around 10 o'clock, my phone buzzes with a text message from an unknown number. "Judge Thompson, this is Patricia Gonzalez from the Tenant Advocacy Group. We wanted you to know that your ruling in Thompson-Hayes is exactly the kind of fair enforcement our community needs. Thank you for protecting vulnerable residents." The message reminds me that judicial decisions affect real people's lives in ways that extend far beyond family dynamics or media coverage. 2 weeks later, I receive a formal invitation to speak at the State Judicial Conference about community-based justice programs, recognition that my professional reputation has survived the ethics investigation and media attention. The invitation suggests that colleagues understand the difference between personal family complications and judicial competence. Victoria hasn't spoken to me since the family dinner revelation, but Dad calls occasionally with awkward conversations that slowly rebuild our relationship. Mom sends cards with carefully neutral messages that express love without addressing the underlying trust issues created by 8 years of deception. The Thompson-Hayes compliance hearing proceeds without my involvement, with a visiting judge from another district overseeing the settlement negotiations. Victoria's company eventually agrees to bring all properties into compliance with building codes and submit to 2 years of enhanced oversight, precisely the outcome I would have ordered if family relationships hadn't complicated the proceedings. 6 months after the revelation, I stand before the mirror in my chambers, adjusting my judicial robes while preparing for another day of municipal court proceedings. The black fabric no longer feels like a costume that conceals my true identity. It represents the professional responsibility I carry for ensuring fairness and justice in daily community interactions. My phone buzzes with a text from Victoria. "Rebecca, I'm ready to talk if you are. Coffee at Murphy's this afternoon." The message represents the first communication since our family dinner confrontation, suggesting that time and reflection have begun healing the damage created by 8 years of deception. I respond immediately, "I'll be there at 3. Thank you for reaching out." The conversation will undoubtedly be difficult, but Victoria's willingness to communicate suggests hope for eventual reconciliation. That afternoon, Victoria enters Murphy's Diner wearing casual clothes and an expression of nervous uncertainty. She orders coffee from Grace and sits across from me in a corner booth, her usual confidence replaced by something more vulnerable and genuine. "Rebecca, I owe you an apology," she begins, her voice lacking the sharp edge that characterized our family dinner conversation. "I've spent 6 months thinking about everything that happened, and I realize my reaction was about my own embarrassment more than legitimate anger about your choices. Victoria, you don't need to apologize for being hurt by my deception," I respond, genuinely surprised by her acknowledgement of responsibility. "Your feelings about what I did were completely valid. Maybe, but the way I expressed those feelings wasn't fair to you or helpful for our family," Victoria continues, stirring her coffee while avoiding direct eye contact. "I've been so focused on my own professional image that I forgot you're my sister first, and whatever mistakes you made came from a place of feeling overlooked rather than malicious intent." The conversation continues for 2 hours, with both of us acknowledging responsibility for family dynamics that made honest communication feel impossible. Victoria admits that her success had become a burden in some ways, creating pressure to maintain perfect appearances that prevented her from recognizing when other family members felt diminished by comparison. "Rebecca, I want you to know that I'm proud of what you've accomplished," Victoria says as we prepare to leave. "Being appointed to the bench at 32 is extraordinary, and the community obviously respects your work. I should have said that 6 months ago instead of focusing on how your revelation affected me." "Thank you," I reply, feeling emotional weight lift from my shoulders for the first time since the family dinner. "And Victoria, I want you to know that I never intended to diminish your achievements or make you look foolish. Your success is genuine and deserves recognition." As Victoria leaves Murphy's Diner, I remain in the booth watching late afternoon sunlight stream through windows that frame the courthouse across the town square. The two buildings represent the dual aspects of my life that are no longer hidden from each other or from my family. Integration hasn't been easy, but it's created space for more authentic relationships built on truth rather than comfortable fictions. That evening, I call Mom and Dad to tell them about my conversation with Victoria, sharing the hope that our family might eventually emerge stronger from the crisis created by 8 years of well-intentioned deception. Their relief is evident in voices that carry less strain than recent months, suggesting that healing can occur when people commit to honesty despite its initial discomfort. The following Monday brings routine court proceedings that remind me why I chose judicial service despite its challenges and complications. Cases involving landlord-tenant disputes, business licensing violations, and community safety concerns provide opportunities to protect vulnerable citizens while ensuring fair treatment for everyone involved in the legal system. My work at Murphy's Diner continues 2 evenings a week, offering authentic community connections that inform my understanding of the people whose lives are affected by municipal court decisions. The dual identity that once required elaborate deception now represents integrated commitment to serving Cedar Rapids through both formal judicial proceedings and informal community relationships. Grace continues offering wisdom earned through decades of observing human nature, reminding me that authentic relationships require courage to be vulnerable rather than perfect. Her perspective, combined with Victoria's eventual forgiveness and my parents' gradual trust rebuilding, creates hope that families can survive even significant deceptions when love provides motivation for forgiveness. The Ethics Commission's censure remains part of my permanent record, serving as a reminder that good intentions don't excuse poor judgment, but also that professional mistakes don't necessarily disqualify someone from continued service. The community's support, evidenced through positive feedback about my judicial decisions and continued welcome at Murphy's Diner, suggests that people understand the difference between personal family complications and professional competence. 8 years of deception created significant pain for people I love, but revealing the truth has also created opportunities for more honest relationships and deeper understanding of family dynamics that needed addressing. The woman who once served coffee while secretly presiding over legal proceedings now integrates both identities openly, finding strength in authenticity rather than exhaustion in maintaining elaborate fictions. Victoria's business eventually recovers from its compliance problems, with improved property management practices that protect tenants while maintaining profitability. Our relationship continues rebuilding slowly with monthly coffee meetings that gradually restore trust and mutual respect. Family dinners remain somewhat awkward, but they're honest in ways they never were during the 8 years when everyone operated with incomplete information about my life. The courthouse and Murphy's Diner continue representing the dual commitments that define my professional and personal identity, no longer hidden from each other but integrated into a life that serves community needs through both formal justice and informal human connection. The truth that seemed too dangerous to reveal has proven less destructive than the lies that preceded it, creating space for relationships built on genuine understanding rather than comfortable assumptions. 3 years have passed since the family dinner that shattered 8 years of carefully maintained deception, and I find myself standing before the Iowa State Bar Association's annual conference, preparing to deliver the keynote address on ethics and judicial service. The irony isn't lost on me that the judge who once faced an ethics investigation for family deception is now speaking to hundreds of attorneys about maintaining integrity in legal practice. The ballroom at the Des Moines Convention Center buzzes with conversation as lawyers from across the state settle into their seats, coffee cups and legal pads arranged for note-taking. I adjust my navy suit jacket, a replacement for the more conservative attire I once thought necessary to project judicial authority. The woman who once hid behind professional costumes now dresses with confidence that comes from authentic self-knowledge rather than manufactured appearances. Ladies and gentlemen, the conference moderator announces, please welcome Judge Rebecca Thompson, who will address the complex intersections between personal relationships and professional responsibilities in legal practice. The introduction creates polite applause, but I notice several attorneys whispering among themselves, probably recalling the media coverage of my ethics investigation 3 years ago. I step to the podium with the steady presence developed through years of managing courtroom proceedings, but my opening words acknowledge the elephant in the room rather than pretending my past controversies don't exist. Thank you for that introduction. I suspect some of you remember me from less flattering headlines about judicial ethics violations, which makes this invitation both surprising and humbling. The honesty creates a shift in the room's energy, with attorneys leaning forward slightly as they recognize this won't be a typical conference presentation filled with abstract legal principles. Real experience, including professional mistakes, often provides more valuable insights than theoretical discussions about best practices. 3 years ago, I faced an ethics investigation because I failed to disclose that my sister was a party in a case before my court. I continue, my voice carrying the measured tone developed through judicial service but warmed by genuine vulnerability. The investigation found that while my ruling was legally sound, my failure to recuse myself immediately created ethical problems that required formal censure. Several attorneys nod with recognition, clearly remembering the case that became a cautionary tale about conflicts of interest in small legal communities. The Cedar Rapids Gazette's coverage had been picked up by legal publications statewide, making my situation a case study in judicial ethics classes. What the investigation didn't address, and what I want to discuss today, is how personal relationships can create impossible ethical situations that standard legal education doesn't prepare us to handle. I explain, moving away from the podium to create a more conversational atmosphere. Sometimes the people we love most create the most complex professional dilemmas. The presentation continues for 45 minutes, covering the practical challenges lawyers face when family relationships intersect with professional responsibilities. I discuss recusal procedures, conflict identification, and communication strategies for managing personal and professional boundaries without destroying family relationships. The questions afterward reveal that many attorneys have faced similar situations, though few have experienced such public consequences for their choices. After the conference, I drive back to Cedar Rapids through Iowa farmland that stretches endlessly under autumn skies painted in shades of gold and amber. The familiar landscape provides perspective on the journey from family deception through public humiliation to professional redemption. The woman who once feared revealing her success to her family now speaks publicly about the importance of honesty in professional relationships. My phone buzzes with a text from Victoria. Watched your conference presentation online. Proud of how you handled difficult questions about our family situation. Dinner this weekend? The message represents remarkable growth in our relationship, which has evolved from mutual resentment through grudging reconciliation to genuine sisterly affection built on honest communication. Victoria's own professional journey has included significant changes since the compliance crisis that first exposed our family dynamics. Thompson-Hayes Real Estate now specializes in affordable housing development, with Victoria leading community partnerships that create safe, accessible homes for low-income families. Her transformation from profit-focused property management to community-centered development work reflects lessons learned through our family's crisis. I respond to Victoria's text while stopped at a rural intersection. I'd love dinner. How about Murphy's? Grace has been asking about you. The suggestion to meet at the diner represents another evolution in our relationship, as Victoria now appreciates the authentic community connections that drew me to maintain my work there despite my judicial responsibilities. The following Saturday finds Victoria and me sharing a booth at Murphy's Diner, where Grace serves us her famous meatloaf while updating us on community news and local politics. Victoria has become a regular customer over the past year, often stopping for coffee during her downtown business meetings. Her initial embarrassment about my diner work has transformed into appreciation for the genuine relationships built through daily service to community members. Rebecca, I've been thinking about what you said in your conference presentation about family relationships creating impossible ethical situations. Victoria says, cutting her meatloaf with precise movements that reflect her continued attention to detail. I realize now that our family dynamics put you in a position where honesty felt more dangerous than deception. We all contributed to those dynamics, I reply, sipping coffee that Grace brewed specifically for our booth conversation. My choice to hide my success created problems, but the family's focus on your achievements made me feel like there wasn't room for both of us to be successful in different ways. Victoria nods thoughtfully, her understanding of family systems deepened by 3 years of reflection and professional counseling that helped her process the revelation's impact. I've been reading about birth order effects and sibling competition. Apparently, our family's response to my early success created pressure that made your achievements feel secondary by comparison. The conversation reflects growth in both our personal relationship and our understanding of family psychology. Victoria's willingness to examine her role in creating family dynamics that encouraged my deception represents significant emotional development for someone who once struggled to acknowledge responsibility for interpersonal problems. Victoria, I want you to know that your success was never the problem. I clarify, reaching across the table to touch her hand. The problem was my assumption that the family couldn't celebrate both of us equally. I underestimated everyone's capacity for pride in different types of achievements. Maybe, but I also made assumptions about what success looked like. Victoria responds, her voice carrying none of the defensive edge that characterized our early reconciliation attempts. I thought corporate law and high salaries were the only measures of professional achievement. I didn't understand that community service and public interest work could be equally valuable. Grace approaches our table with coffee refills and the warm smile she reserves for conversations that heal rather than harm relationships. You two have come a long way from that night 3 years ago when Victoria stormed out of here angry about family secrets, she observes, settling into the booth beside me during the dinner rush lull. Grace witnessed some of our more difficult conversations during the reconciliation process. I explained to Victoria, remembering several tearful phone calls from Murphy's back office when family relationships seemed permanently damaged by the revelation's aftermath. She also provided wisdom that helped me understand Rebecca's perspective. Victoria adds, smiling at Grace with genuine affection. Grace pointed out that secrets usually protect people from pain they're not ready to handle, which helped me see Rebecca's deception as misguided protection rather than malicious manipulation. The three-way conversation continues for another hour, with Grace sharing observations about family relationships developed through decades of serving community members during their personal crises. Her insights, grounded in practical experience rather than academic theory, often provide clarity that professional counseling struggled to achieve. As we prepare to leave Murphy's, Victoria mentions her latest affordable housing project, a development specifically designed for seniors and disabled residents who need accessible living spaces. Rebecca, I'd like you to review the project plans from a regulatory perspective. Your experience with housing code enforcement could help us avoid compliance problems that might delay construction. The request represents complete reversal from Victoria's initial reaction to learning about my judicial work. 3 years ago, she viewed my regulatory knowledge as threatening to her business interests. Now she seeks my expertise to ensure her projects meet the highest standards for resident safety and accessibility. I'd be happy to review the plans, I respond, genuinely pleased by Victoria's transformation from someone who viewed regulations as obstacles to someone who sees them as protections for vulnerable residents. Community development projects work best when legal compliance supports rather than conflicts with design goals. The following week brings the monthly status conference for the Thompson-Hayes compliance monitoring, now overseen by Judge Patricia Williams, who returned from retirement to handle the case after my recusal. The hearing has become routine, with Victoria's company consistently exceeding compliance requirements while maintaining profitable operations. Judge Williams approaches me after the hearing, her expression showing the mixture of professional respect and personal concern that has characterized our relationship since she mentored my early judicial career. Rebecca, I've been following your conference presentations and community outreach work. Your experience with the ethics investigation seems to have deepened rather than diminished your commitment to judicial service. Patricia, the investigation forced me to examine assumptions about privacy and professional responsibility that I'd never questioned before. I reply, walking with her toward the courthouse parking lot where late October sunshine creates shadows among the maple trees. Sometimes professional crises create opportunities for growth that wouldn't occur under normal circumstances. That's a mature perspective on what must have been a very difficult period, Judge Williams observes, unlocking her car while continuing our conversation. The legal community's response to your situation has been largely supportive, recognizing that complex family relationships can create ethical dilemmas that don't have clear solutions. Her words confirm what I've sensed through conference invitations, continuing collegial relationships, and respectful treatment from attorneys who appear before my court. The ethics violation became part of my professional record without defining my entire judicial career, allowing continued service while serving as a reminder about the importance of transparency and conflict identification. That evening I attend the monthly meeting of the Iowa Judicial Ethics Advisory Committee, where my experience with family conflict situations has made me a resource for other judges facing similar dilemmas. The committee reviews hypothetical scenarios and provides guidance for judges navigating complex personal and professional relationships. Judge Thompson, Committee Chair Michael Stevens begins. We've received an inquiry from a district court judge whose daughter-in-law is an attorney who might appear before his court. He's asking about recusal requirements and disclosure obligations. The scenario parallels my own situation in ways that make my experience directly relevant to providing guidance. The key consideration is whether the family relationship could reasonably create an appearance of bias, regardless of the judge's actual ability to remain impartial. I respond, drawing on lessons learned through my own ethics investigation. Even when judges believe they can be fair, family relationships create perceptions that can undermine public confidence in judicial proceedings. The committee discussion continues for 90 minutes, with my contributions informed by practical experience rather than abstract legal principles. The ethics violation that once threatened my career has become a source of expertise that helps other judges avoid similar problems while maintaining appropriate professional boundaries. After the committee meeting, I drive through downtown Cedar Rapids, where streetlights illuminate Murphy's Diner and the courthouse square where my professional and personal identities finally achieved integration 3 years ago. The woman who once compartmentalized her life into separate hidden identities now serves openly as both community judge and diner worker, finding strength in authenticity rather than exhaustion in elaborate deception. My apartment reflects this integration, with judicial opinions and diner schedules sharing space on the kitchen table, law books and community service awards displayed together on living room shelves. The careful separation that once required constant mental energy has been replaced by honest acknowledgement of both professional responsibilities and personal commitments. The next morning brings routine court proceedings that demonstrate how judicial work serves community needs through fair resolution of daily conflicts. Landlord-tenant disputes, business licensing issues, and traffic violations might seem mundane compared to high-profile cases, but they affect real people's lives in immediate practical ways. During the lunch recess, Lisa Martinez, my court clerk, mentions receiving a call from the State Judicial College requesting my participation in a training program for new judges about ethics and family relationships. Judge Thompson, they specifically want you to address how personal conflicts can create professional dilemmas that standard training doesn't cover. I'd be honored to participate, I respond, recognizing how the experience that once seemed like career-ending embarrassment has become a resource for educating other judicial officers. Sharing difficult experiences can help others avoid similar problems while building understanding about the complexities of judicial service. The training invitation represents another step in professional rehabilitation, showing that colleagues view my ethics violation as a learning experience rather than disqualifying misconduct. The legal community's capacity for forgiveness, when combined with demonstrated commitment to improved practice, allows professionals to recover from mistakes while contributing to systemic improvement. That afternoon, I walk across the town square to Murphy's for my regular Thursday shift, the familiar routine providing balance between formal judicial responsibilities and informal community connections. Grace greets me with her usual warm smile, but her expression shows concern about news she's received during the day. "Rebecca, honey, I got a call from my nephew in Chicago. He's a reporter, and he's heard rumors about a documentary filmmaker who wants to make a movie about your family situation," Grace explains, her voice carrying the protective tone she uses when community members face unwanted publicity. "What kind of documentary?" I ask, tying my apron while considering the implications of renewed media attention 3 years after the initial controversy. The possibility of having family conflicts examined for entertainment purposes creates anxiety that surprises me with its intensity. Something about family secrets and small-town justice, according to my nephew. He thought you should know in case reporters start calling again. Grace's information confirms concerns I've had about the enduring public interest in stories that combine family drama with professional authority. The evening shift provides time to think while serving familiar customers who remember the media coverage from 3 years ago, but treat me with unchanged respect and warmth. These relationships, built on daily interactions rather than professional achievements or personal controversies, represent the authentic community connections that make both judicial work and diner service meaningful. Around 9 o'clock, as I'm refilling coffee for a retired teacher who comes in every Thursday, my phone buzzes with a call from Victoria. "Rebecca, I got a strange call today from someone claiming to be a documentary filmmaker. They wanted to interview me about our family situation for a movie about judicial ethics. I told them to go away, but I thought you should know." Grace heard similar rumors, I reply, stepping into Murphy's back office for privacy. "I suppose our story has enough dramatic elements to interest filmmakers looking for compelling human interest angles. Rebecca, I want you to know that I'll never participate in anything that exploits our family's private business for public entertainment," Victoria says firmly, her voice carrying protective anger on my behalf. "Whatever mistakes we made, we worked through them as a family, and that process doesn't belong in a movie." Victoria's support means more than she probably realizes, representing complete reversal from her initial reaction to our family conflicts becoming public knowledge. The sister who once blamed me for professional embarrassment now defends our privacy against external exploitation. The following week brings confirmation of the documentary project when a production assistant calls my chambers requesting an interview about ethical challenges in small-town judicial systems. I decline politely but firmly, explaining that my family's private conflicts aren't appropriate subjects for public entertainment. The documentary interest creates an opportunity to reflect on how much has changed in 3 years since the initial revelation destroyed 8 years of careful deception. The woman who once feared family discovery of her professional success now protects family privacy from commercial exploitation, demonstrating growth and understanding about appropriate boundaries between public service and personal relationships. Victoria and I meet for coffee the following Saturday to discuss strategies for handling continued media interest without creating additional publicity through our responses. Our conversation takes place at Murphy's, where Grace provides both practical advice and emotional support for dealing with unwanted attention. Rebecca, I've been thinking about what you said in your conference presentation about impossible ethical situations. Victoria begins, stirring her coffee while watching autumn leaves fall outside the diner windows. Maybe our family story could help other people who face similar conflicts, but only if we control how it's told. What do you mean? I ask, intrigued by Victoria's suggestion that we might transform potential exploitation into educational opportunity. I mean, we could write our own article for a legal journal, focusing on lessons learned rather than family drama. Victoria explains, her business mind recognizing possibilities for positive impact. Your experience could help other judges identify conflicts earlier, and my perspective could show how family members can support rather than complicate professional responsibilities. The suggestion appeals to me as a way to share valuable insights while maintaining control over how our story is presented. A professional article written from our own perspectives could provide practical guidance for other families facing similar situations without sensationalizing personal conflicts for entertainment value. Victoria, I think that's an excellent idea, I respond, already considering how such an article might help other judges and their families navigate complex relationship dynamics. The Iowa Bar Journal might be interested in a piece about family relationships and professional ethics. Our conversation continues for 2 hours, outlining an article that would combine my judicial perspective with Victoria's experience as a family member affected by professional conflicts. The collaborative writing project represents another step in our relationship's evolution from mutual resentment to genuine partnership in addressing shared challenges. Grace joins our conversation during the afternoon lull, offering insights about family relationships developed through decades of community service. You two have learned something important about turning painful experiences into opportunities to help others, she observes, refilling our coffee cups while settling into the booth beside us. Writing about our experience feels different from having it exploited by strangers, Victoria explains, her understanding of media dynamics informed by years of managing business publicity. We can focus on practical lessons rather than personal drama. The article project provides structure for continued reflection on lessons learned through 3 years of family healing and professional growth. Victoria and I spend the following weeks interviewing each other about our perspectives on the events that transformed our relationship, discovering insights that hadn't emerged through previous conversations. 1 month later, we submit our collaborative article to the Iowa Bar Journal with the title Family Relationships and Judicial Ethics: Lessons from Personal Experience. The piece combines my professional analysis of conflict identification with Victoria's perspective on how family members can support rather than complicate professional responsibilities. The journal's editor responds enthusiastically, noting that few articles address family dynamics and judicial ethics from such personal and practical perspectives. The publication date is scheduled for the following spring, with advance copies distributed to judicial ethics committees statewide. The documentary filmmaker eventually abandons the project after failing to secure cooperation from key participants, confirming our strategy of declining interviews while providing alternative educational resources. Our experience demonstrates that families can maintain privacy while contributing to professional development in ways that serve broader community interests. 6 months after submitting the article, I received notification that the Iowa Bar Journal piece has been selected for inclusion in a national anthology about legal ethics in small communities. The recognition transforms our family's crisis into a resource for legal professionals nationwide, who face similar conflicts between personal relationships and professional responsibilities. Victoria's affordable housing projects continue expanding, with her company now recognized statewide for innovative approaches to accessible community development. Her transformation from profit-focused property management to community-centered housing advocacy demonstrates how professional crises can create opportunities for meaningful career changes. Our family relationships have stabilized around honest communication and mutual respect for different types of professional achievement. Mom and Dad now attend both Victoria's business recognition ceremonies and my judicial ethics presentations, demonstrating equal pride in our respective contributions to community welfare. The courthouse and Murphy's Diner continue representing integrated aspects of my professional and personal identity, no longer hidden from each other but functioning together to serve community needs through both formal justice and informal human connection. The woman who once feared revealing her success now finds strength in authentic integration of all aspects of her life. As I reflect on the journey from family deception through public exposure to professional redemption, the most important lesson appears to be that authenticity requires courage but ultimately provides more sustainable satisfaction than elaborate performance. The truth that once seemed too dangerous to reveal has created opportunities for deeper relationships and more meaningful work than careful deception ever provided. Standing in my courthouse chambers on a Friday afternoon 3 years after the family revelation, I review the week's accomplishments while preparing for another evening shift at Murphy's Diner. The integration of professional responsibility and personal commitment no longer requires careful management or mental compartmentalization. It simply represents who I am and how I serve my community. The setting sun streams through chambers windows that overlook the town square where Murphy's Diner's neon sign announces another evening of community service. Both buildings represent authentic expressions of my commitment to fairness, dignity, and genuine human connection in all professional and personal relationships. The woman who once lived in fear of family discovery now embraces the vulnerability that comes with complete honesty, finding freedom in authenticity that no amount of careful deception could ever provide. The journey was difficult, sometimes painful, but ultimately transformative in ways that continue creating opportunities for growth and service. Victoria's last text of the week arrives as I'm leaving the courthouse, proud of everything you've accomplished both on the bench and at Murphy's. See you Sunday for family dinner. The message represents complete reversal from the sister who once mocked my minimum wage work, confirming that authentic relationships built on truth provide more satisfaction than performances designed to impress. The family that once operated with comfortable fictions now functions through honest communication, creating space for everyone's achievements to be recognized and celebrated. The painful process of revealing long-hidden truths has ultimately strengthened rather than destroyed the relationships it was intended to protect. As I walk across the town square toward Murphy's Diner for another evening of community service, the autumn air carries the promise of winter's approach and the eternal cycle of seasons that reminds us that change, though difficult, is both inevitable and ultimately necessary for growth. The woman who once hid her light under a bushel now lets it shine freely, illuminating paths for others who face similar choices between comfortable deception and challenging authenticity. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.